This video is brought to you by Skillshare, an online learning community for creators with tens of thousands of classes in design, business, and more. Use the link in the description below. Get a 2-month free trial. Premium membership with Skillshare gives you unlimited classes on their platform so you can join the classes and communities that are perfect for you. Whether you want to fuel your curiosity, creativity, or even your career, Skillshare is the perfect place to keep you learning and keep you thriving. Me, I've taken courses on video production, naturally, and a whole bunch else. Lately, I've been really diving into productivity as I want to squeeze out as much as possible from every single day. There's a course on there by a chap called Thomas Frank, who's a YouTuber as well, all about getting more stuff done in a single day. Absolutely worth checking it out. So yes, Skillshare, just go do it. You will like it. Also, 2 months for free. So if you don't, it's no big deal. If you do want to continue, just $10 a month, but no pressure. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable when compared to pricey in-person classes and workshops. I've been to some of those. It always feels like it's just too much. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month with Skillshare, so support VisualPolitik by supporting Skillshare. That would be wonderful. There is a link below to that 2-month trial, and let's get into it. In recent decades, Donald Trump stands out as the president who's been the most hostile in his attitudes towards Hispanics. Perhaps he is even the most hostile in the entire history of the United States. His comments against immigration, Mexicans, Salvadorians, you don't have to look very far to understand why a good part of the Hispanic population can't stand President Trump.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. African Americans, Hispanics are living in hell because it's so dangerous. You walk down the street, you get shot.
But don't get me wrong, here on VisualPolitik, we're all for people changing their minds and their behavior. I mean, come on, I'm sure that 10 years ago you didn't have the same views as you do today is certainly true for me. After all, self-correction is a sign of wisdom. And you know what? It may come as a surprise, but this is what Trump is doing in his own kind of weird way. Don't believe me? Well, he really is. Check this out.
I love immigrants. I love immigrants. This country is based on immigrants.
We got a lot of Hispanics. We love our Hispanics. Get out and vote.
It's quite the change, wouldn't you agree? So the question is, what on earth happened? Well, no, Trump didn't undergo a deep spiritual transformation, nor was he suddenly moved to empathize with the Hispanic community's situation. And no, it's not even because he's a fan of Jennifer Lopez's last hit. Do you want to know what really lies behind this game change? Well, listen up. The Hispanic vote. Remember these 3 words because they may be key in the 2020 US elections. To give you an idea, Hispanics already account for 18% of the entire US population, and this percentage keeps on growing. Hispanics are already the largest minority group in the country. According to every projection and demographic model, by 2060, the percentage of Hispanics will exceed 26% of the population of the United States. In other words, just over 1 in 4 Americans will be Hispanic. Obviously, this will give them a gradually increasing electoral influence. So making policies or giving speeches against Hispanics doesn't look like a great way to reap political success. It all seems pretty obvious, doesn't it? However, hold on a second, because nowadays the electoral weight of the Hispanic community is much, much weaker than it could be. And why is that? Well, that's because if there is something that characterizes the Hispanic vote in the United States, it's that it is very hard to mobilize. Hispanics are known for their low voter turnout in US elections, and that's really bad. But why does this happen? What exactly is the Spanish electorate? What concerns do they have? And how is the Hispanic vote distributed throughout the country? It sounds like a lot of questions, but I promise you we're going to answer each and every one of them in this video. And here we go.
Hispanics the major minority?
If we take a look at the main ethnic groups in the United States, we'll notice that the Hispanic population has some peculiar characteristics. And as we've said, we aren't exactly talking about a small community here. Almost 60 million Hispanics lived in the US by the end of 2018. This makes the United States the second largest Hispanic country in terms of population. Although it seems hard to believe, the United States has more Hispanic people than the entire populations of countries like Colombia, Argentina, or even Spain. The Hispanic community of the United States grows in demographic terms at a rate of 2% per year, and in recent decades, their standard of living has also improved a lot. To give you an idea, the current rate of unemployment for Hispanics is close to its historical low, below 5%. The dropout rate decreased from 29.4% in 1991 to 9.2% in 2015, and the rate of Hispanics enrolled in universities rose from 25% to 47% in just 10 years between 2005 and 2015. These are very good numbers, and these changes guarantee Hispanics a much greater economic, political, and social influence in the years to come. To illustrate this, just since 2000, Hispanics' purchasing power in the US has increased by 181%, rising to $1.4 trillion. This means that the United States is the largest Hispanic economic power in the world. The Hispanic economy in the United States is larger than the entire economy of Spain or Mexico. Hispanic power is only going to increase in the United States. However, it's not all good news. If we talk in terms of income and poverty, the truth is that the Hispanic population is still far behind the white population and other minority groups, such as Asian Americans. Despite their rise in upward mobility, more than 19% of Hispanics, that's roughly 1 in 5, are still below the poverty line according to US standards, and their average income per capita doesn't surpass $19,000 per year, which is half of what the average white person makes. But let's not get off track, let's return to politics, which is really what this video is all about. The Hispanic population is very young. Their average age is 10 years lower than the national average and 15 years lower than the average age of the white population in the US. These demographics obviously influence the community's political preferences and their degree of participation. It may also explain why, while Hispanics already account for 18% of the country's population, in terms of potential voters, they barely account for 11%. And on top of that, they vote less frequently. That's why their political influence is still relatively small. But this is also changing.
The dysfunction of the Hispanic vote.
First look at the map. The distribution of the Hispanic population might indicate that they are a determining community when it comes to the elections. Because as you know, in the US elections, the presidential candidate who obtains the majority in a state gets all of that state's delegates. That happens in virtually every case. It's an all or nothing situation. That's why the presidential victory depends on getting more delegates than the opponent, not more votes. And that makes the states with the most delegate seats the prize that all presidential candidates desire. Well, it turns out that Hispanics have a very high presence in those prized states. The Hispanic population is mostly concentrated in California, Texas, New York, Florida, and Illinois, 5 of these 6 states with the most delegates distributed in the elections. That's 171 out of a total of 538 delegates. So you can probably see why at first glance they seem so crucial to the elections. Yeah, they are, but they're also not. So let's see. Many analysts claim that the Hispanic vote can decide presidents, but the truth is that it isn't so clear today, at least not for the 2020 elections. So what's the problem? Well, that's what we've already told you. Hispanics don't really vote. Among all ethnic groups, Hispanics are the least electorally mobilized. For example, in the last presidential elections in 2016, just over 57% of Hispanics with the right to vote actually registered to do so. Now that's a low number, but what's even worse is that in the end, only 47.6% actually voted. That's almost 20 points less than the political participation of non-Hispanic white people. So why is it that Hispanics avoid elections so much? Well, there are many factors, but the most important one is that it's mostly a young population. And well, what can I say? Outside the VisualPolitik community, it seems like many young people tend to just skip over politics. But that's not the only reason. The lower average level of education and income also feeds political apathy. But at this point, many of you are probably already thinking, well, come on, this is normal. It happens in a lot of countries. Well, yes, but also no. We're here to tell you this. Little by little, this divergence regarding the non-Hispanic white population is lowering. Hispanics are studying more, making more money, and voting more. For example, look at what happens in the most recent elections, the midterm elections.
Latino turnout up 174% in 2018 midterm elections, Democrats say.
And of course, you might be thinking, if the problem of mobilizing the Hispanic community is being solved, could they be really decisive in 2020? Well, let's see.
We are the American dream. You need us. We are the dreamers of USA.
Could Hispanics decide the 2020 election?
Do you have good memory? Do you remember Trump's words, which we saw at the beginning of this video? No, I'm not referring to the ones in which he insults Hispanics, but the latest in which he suddenly seems to love them.
We got a lot of Hispanics. We love our Hispanics. Get out and vote.
Well, that change of opinion could have a lot to do with what we're going to see next.
Hispanics could make a difference in 2020 if they turn out to vote.
An important fact, the 2020 elections will be the first elections in the history of the United States in which Hispanics will be the minority with the most electoral power, surpassing the African American population. Yep, with 32 million potential voters by 2020, Hispanics will account for 13% of the electoral roll. There will be 2 million more of them than African American voters. And nowadays, Hispanic dynamics are quite clear. 2 out of every 3 usually vote for Democratic Party candidates. But the explanation for this isn't that they're Democrats or Republicans. It lies in the systematic opposition that the Republican Party has had to them in recent years. Yes, despite what is commonly believed, the Hispanic vote is extremely volatile, indeed perhaps the most volatile. Most don't identify themselves as dedicated supporters of one particular party, but rather oscillate based on the candidates and the political proposals that they have on the table. And the Trump campaign is well aware of that. You see, all studies suggest that the economy, along with the improvement of education and safety, are the 3 issues that Hispanic voters care most about. And the truth is that the US economy has been performing quite well in recent years. For example, the income of Hispanic households is the fastest growing, and also remember that Hispanic unemployment is at a record low. In fact, even though it's still low at just 30%, Trump's popularity among Hispanics has slightly rebounded. Therefore, although it may come as a surprise, the Trump campaign hasn't given up on the attempt to improve their support level among the Hispanic community. The Vamos to Victory campaign is a good example of that.
More Hispanics think that Trump's campaign have the community in mind, but those who say they will vote for him are a minority.
And the question is, could this be Trump's last card? A demobilized Hispanic vote would definitely benefit him, but what if they were to mobilize? Wouldn't it be more sensible to reinforce his position in that new voting ground? Or at the very least, stop giving Hispanics reasons to mobilize against him? The truth is that everything indicates that in 2020, Hispanics are going to vote more. Their participation is set to break all records for a presidential election, just as it did in the midterms.
Hispanic voter turnout in 2018 increased dramatically in 6 states, analysis finds. Hispanic voter turnout increased significantly in the 2018 midterms as compared to the 2014 election, according to Univision analysis of turnout in California, Florida, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, and Texas.
Do some of those states sound familiar to you? Exactly, you got it. Out of the 5 states where Hispanic vote increased the most, no less than 4, California, Florida, New York, and Texas, are among the ones with the most delegates. In other words, they are the most important regarding presidential elections. So having seen this, will the Hispanic community be the deciding factor this time? Will Trump manage to improve his popularity among Hispanics? Because in spite of everything, if the economy continues to do well, it's not entirely unlikely. However, the trade war with China is having harsh consequences for the US, and economic slowdown is a reality. If 2020 gets worse, it may even be Hispanics who end up throwing Trump out of the White House. That would be rather ironic, wouldn't you think? Anyway, now it's your turn. Will Trump get re-elected by seducing the Hispanic vote, or are we on the verge of an epic revenge? So I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please do hit that like button if you did, and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos. Also, please do check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. Also, this channel is possible because of Patreon and our patrons on that platform. Please do consider joining them and supporting our mission of providing independent political coverage. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.